Good afternoon, Chamber members. For those of you I haven't met yet, I'm Sabrina Binkley, Head of School at Spruce Tree Montessori and Board Chair for the Greater Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to take a minute, as we do each week, to thank our executive partners whose logos you saw on the screen before we began our program today. These businesses are the backbone of business in our community and a pillar of strength for the Fairbanks Chamber, particularly this year. A full list of our executive partners can be found on our website. I would also like to let you know that the Chamber is accepting applications for our 2021 Advocacy Committee members through October 30th. Our 5 advocacy committees advise the Chamber on issues which may affect our members. They meet regularly to learn about issues affecting our region, to provide input on advocacy actions, for example, like the political forum we are hosting today, and to determine our advocacy program of work for the upcoming year. Any employee of a Chamber member organization may apply to join the advocacy committees. Please check out fairbankschamber.org and click on the committees link for more information. Now to today's program. Welcome to the Fairbanks Chamber's Political Forum for candidates running for Alaska House Seat 2 and House Seat 6. Today's forum will last about 90 minutes. If you can't stay online until 1:30 today, or you missed any of our previous forums, recordings of all 2020 Fairbanks Chamber forums can be found at fairbankschamber.org. The Greater Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce is a nonpartisan organization which advocates for the conditions that will allow businesses of all sizes to prosper in our region. We are focused on the betterment of our members by working with all levels of local, state, and federal government officials. Our goal for our political forums is to help you in the audience understand your choices during this fall's election cycle. The candidates here today will appear on the ballot for the November 3rd general election. Please note that you have a choice, as always, this fall, whether to vote in person or by mail. You still have time to apply for an absentee ballot for the general election. You can apply online at elections.alaska.gov. And once you receive your ballot, it may need a few extra days to travel through the mail, so today would be an excellent day to fill out that form. Now I'd like to introduce you to our moderator today, who has volunteered to lead today's discussion. Patrick Carter is a member of the Fairbanks Chamber's Board of Directors. Patrick is a 22-year resident of Fairbanks and a UAF graduate. He is the Business Development Director for BDC Engineers and leads the company's planning department. Patrick and his wife have 2 boys that keep them busy with hockey, school, and friends. Welcome, Patrick. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Sabrina. And thank you to all the candidates for joining us today. We really appreciate your participation, and thank you for your willingness to serve in public office and for the work you'll do on behalf of the residents and businesses of Fairbanks. So I will introduce each of you, and as I do that, if you could please wave when I say your name, and that will give folks online a chance to put a name to a face. So the candidates running for Alaska House Seat 2 are Jeremiah Humans, who is here today, Representative Steve Thompson, who had a family commitment which required him to travel today, and Matthew Wasdike, who did not respond to our invitation. The candidates running for Alaska House Seat 6 are Vernon Carlson, gives a wave, Monk, Julia Nelica, all right, and Elijah Verhagen. All right, thank you for participating, candidates, and welcome to the forum. So I also want to extend the Chamber's sincere thanks to our Political Forum Series sponsors, Alaska Oil and Gas Association, Doyon Limited, Hale & Associates, the Hedgecock Real Estate Group, and MAC Federal Credit Union. So these organizations support informed voting and encourage you to engage with important issues facing our state. So let's do a quick review of our format today. So the candidates will be asked a series of questions that are either a short answer or yes or no. Each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one question to his or her opponent and may rebut an opponent's answer once during the forum. The only exception to these candidate-to-candidate questions will be Mr. Humans, since he does not have an opponent participating in today's forum. We've also reserved time at the end for audience questions. So if any of our online audience has questions throughout the presentation, please type them into the chat box on YouTube. Chamber staff are monitoring that, and we'll select the questions to ask at the end. We have limited time here today, so I encourage the audience to engage with the candidates outside of this forum to learn more about them, their philosophies, and their visions for the state of Alaska. And now to the candidates, I have a few last-minute instructions before we begin. As I ask each question, I will give you a time limit. I will also indicate what order you will answer in. We will rotate the order for each question to give everyone a turn to speak first. Candidates for seat 6 will always answer back-to-back to help viewers understand their choices for each seat. After each person has finished speaking, I will indicate the next candidate, just in case you forget the order. Our official timekeeper will start the timer on the screen when you begin speaking. Please stop when your time is up so that we can cover all of the questions. The timer will briefly flash red if you're in the middle of a sentence when the time expires. If necessary, we will mute your line to keep the forum moving along. So with that, let's get started. So each candidate will have 30 seconds to answer the introductory question. We will start with seat 2, Mr. Humans. Then we will continue with seat 6 in alphabetical order by last name. So Mr. Carlson, Mr. Kronk, Ms. Nilica, and Mr. Verhagen. So the question is, if you could guarantee one piece of legislation to pass in 2021, what would it be and why? Mr. Humans, please start us off with your 30-second response.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We got this question early and I had a little struggle with it because there were so many things that I wanted to just snap my fingers and fix. But I think the one that I would absolutely push for is universal pre-K. It would just help working Alaskans entirely. It would help improve our education system and get better results for our education system. It's a pretty simple idea to have universal pre-K. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, you have 30 seconds for your response.
My response, as with Mr. Humans, I also kind of struggled with this one here, and it's going to be basically crime against people. It's like if I could have legislation, I would have every crime that's ever out there investigated, particularly the most felonious or the ones that are felons, investigated to their extent where all victims have a say in court sooner than later.
Thank you. Mr. Kronk, your 30-second response.
All right, great question. Obviously, one big thing brought up across the travels of District 6 is the budget. So with that in mind, I think the first thing that truly needs to be done is get a spending cap in place where we can then get to work and begin putting our attention at the budget. Unless and until Alaskans trust that legislators and their spending habits are under control, gridlock is going to continue. So a spending cap would be my focus.
Thank you. Ms. Nilica, your 30-second response.
Thank you very much. The first piece of legislation that I will fight for is a comprehensive overhaul to our Village Public Safety Officer program and evaluation of the Trooper program. Our law enforcement is spread too thin in all of District 6 for timely responses to crime. From Salcha to Chena Hot Springs Road to Mentasta and Rampart, we need to have homegrown law enforcement that knows us and our communities. I will track down the money that Attorney General William Barr dedicated to Alaska. The over $50 million was explicitly allocated for our public safety crisis. Where is the money? Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Verhagen.
Thank you. Great question. Very hard because there's a lot of legislation that I'm going to be carrying, but probably the one that I'm going to fight for and hope passes the most is cut legislative per diem during session in half. I've been a staffer down in Juneau for 4 different representatives. Staffers didn't get per diem and we made it by just fine. Before we start cutting the budget, which I am definitely going to be talking about how we need to show an example as legislators to be willing to cut our legislative per diem in half. They make about $34,000 just for the 90-day session. And to lead by example, I'm going to be pushing that we cut that in half. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Now we have a series of questions based on the Fairbanks Chamber's advocacy agenda. issues suggested by chamber members. So we anticipate that our next question may dominate the coming legislative session, so you'll have 90 seconds to respond with a detailed answer. We will start with seat 6, Mr. Carlson, Mr. Kronk, Ms. Nilica, and Mr. Verhagen, then seat 2, Mr. Youmans. In 2017, the Alaska Supreme Court unanimously stated that the legislature's use of permanent fund income is subject to normal appropriation and veto budgetary processes. The question is, how would you prioritize the use of the permanent fund earnings in state budget discussions? Please be specific about what level of PFD you think is appropriate and what state services you would cut to pay for it. Mr. Carlson, 90 seconds are on the clock. Your response.
This is pretty simple. The PFD just needs to grow, and the state fiscal program needs to grow in the respect that the PFD has had no monies contributed to it since 2017. That turned it into an issue. So we need to get more economic resource development and or second level of resource development growing to where we got more funds going into the PFD, so we have more funds to be able to come back out to go back to the people. And we also need to get the monies allocated back to where we have a state budget that has funds in it to put money back to the people. So and or provide services. It's to me, it's a no-brainer. It's like start contributing more money into the PFD, because the financial world out there is not even contributing to it. I think we're getting 2% interest on it, and that's just not a big number. We have to increase that dramatically.
Thank you. Mr. Kronk, 90 seconds for your response.
All right. Well, obviously, this is a tough question. I believe that the state should have been following the statute from the get-go. We should have been paying the dividend, and we should have never used that for government services. But the question now remains that how are we going to have a budget and pay the dividend at the same time? We have multiple departments that may need to be cut, and we have to identify the essentials and the non-essentials in our government right now. Then we'll need to start as a unified group to begin making those cuts that are necessary. Again, there's nothing promised when you have 40 representatives and 20 senators trying to work together to make these hard cuts and make these hard decisions. But we are going to have to find common ground in order to get anything done. The question remains, how much are we going to have to cut? But we need to focus on sustainable revenue and resource development in order to become prosperous again. And so we have the funds to, fund a budget and not continue cutting things.
Thank you. Ms. Nilica, you have 90 seconds for your response.
Thank you. Reducing the PFD impacts all Alaskans, but especially Alaskans in House District 6 who use their PFD funds to pay for heating fuel, winter tires, and other winter essentials. Lazy legislation has reduced the PFD amount, effectively creating a flat tax on all Alaskans. But our services are important. We depend on our roads, our airports, and our schools, which are all now more expensive due to pandemic and also reduced revenue. Rating our future for a full payback is very short-sighted. Michael states on his website that he wants a $5,000 immediate payback, but doesn't understand that that will impact our grandchildren, and they will probably not get to benefit from our resources and the PFD as we have. The corpus of the permanent fund is the most stable and consistent source of revenue for our state. It is an investment account, not to be spent in the short term. But that being said, Alaskans need to decide. I will fight for a constitutional amendment that puts this political battering ram to rest. Alaskans are the ones who are in control of the PFD, and they need to be able to vote and decide on a formula that is then enshrined in our Constitution, so we can move forward and quit fighting over the PFD and make sure that we are focused on the things that bring in revenue and reduce state spending. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Verhagen.
So how this works and how the PFD is paid is we have the Corpus main PFD account that's generating interest, and that generates just over $3 billion a year in present years or recent years. That $3 billion dumps into the earnings reserve account, and that is where the PFDs are paid from. And so currently there's just over $8 billion in the earnings reserve account. That is the people's money. What has always been done until 2016 when Walker vetoed it and then it turned it into a political football is that the legislature paid from the 5-year average formula a full PFD all the way until 2016. I am going to fight for a full statutory PFD only, no chincing on this, and I'll explain why in some of our other questions. But to fund this, there's money currently in the earnings reserve account that this coming session I will only vote for a full PFD until the statutes change. Now the statute, because of cumulative spending of both Republicans and Democrats in the legislature, they have drained the CBR. We are in a much dire financial situation than most understand. So the formula may need to be changed, but ever since I started running, I've advocated, and I will push as a legislator that this goes before the people in a statewide vote, because it should not be the legislators that are changing the formula. It's the people's money, and therefore everyone should have a say. So that's what I'm going to fight for. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Humans, you have 90 seconds for your response.
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is going to be the question that dominates the discussions in the upcoming session. But I think that the other answer to this question is, how is the state going to raise new revenue? Instead of having a de facto regressive tax that disproportionately affects low and middle income Alaskans, we need to have a progressive broad-based tax to fund the government, instead of having a de facto confiscation of the permanent fund dividend. We need to decouple the discussion of the budget and the discussion of the permanent fund. The permanent fund is the people's money from our natural resources, and the people should get their full permanent fund dividend. But we need to discuss progressive taxation to fund the government, because, I mean, there's not a lot to cut left. Are we going to cut education? Are we going to cut public safety? Because those are the two biggest blocks left in our and health and social services through Medicaid. That's what's left to cut, unless we raise new revenue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, as a reminder to our online audience, if you have a question, you can type that into the chat box, and we'll be monitoring those and asking those at the end if we have time. So on to our first candidate-to-candidate question. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask their opponent a question, and the opponent will have 60 seconds to answer. If desired, the asking candidate may take 15 seconds to address the answer, and the opponent may have an additional 30 seconds to clarify. We drew the order randomly before the broadcast. So we will start with Mr. Cronk. Candidate questions will be interspersed throughout the rest of the program. They will go in the order of Ms. Nilika, then Mr. Verhagen, and finally Mr. Carlson. Mr. Humans does not have an opponent in attendance, so you'll not get to ask a candidate question today. So we will start with Mr. Cronk. You have 30 seconds to ask a question of an opponent, if you would like.
All right, thank you. Well, let's call it the $64,000 question for Elijah. Multiple long-term conservatives throughout the district have asked why you have chosen to bolt the Republican Party and split the conservative vote within our district. Just recently, Jeff Landfield of the Landmine announced that last week that the Liberal candidate in District 6 from your hometown only needs 40% of the House, 40% to win the House seat. Please explain why you are willing to split the conservative vote, giving a substantial advantage to a Liberal activist who has now been empowered with over $64,000 to win our solid conservative House seat.
All right, Mr. Verhagen, you have 60 seconds to answer.
Thank you. So I took the uphill battle running as a undeclared conservative candidate. I've dedicated my entire adult life, 12 years, to serving the Republican Party within the party at the district and state level. And I fought hard for help to help us stick by our platform and our principles, and I will continue. I've always been a principle before party person. So I took 2 months to make this decision. I knew it would be a lot easier if I ran as a Republican, but I decided to run. I did not feel right about running as a Republican. I actually did try to run as an undeclared conservative in the Republican primary, and they did not let me. That's okay. I'm not worried about splitting the conservative vote because I do have a lot of support from the villages. I have a lot of conservative support. We do have Julian Illica and Vernon Carlson, who will both be splitting in a general, about a 30 to maybe 40% liberal vote. And so I'm really not concerned. I think it'll be close, but I do think I'm going to win. And I'm fighting for principle, not party. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Cronk, do you have a 15-second response?
Yeah, real quick. He says, you quit the party. And again, he stated that he's going to caucus with the Republicans that he has bashed continually over this year. So my question is how do you expect to get anything done if you do win with any legislation when you have actually, burned some bridges?
So my answer to that would be I've actually only attacked the records of the Republicans that have joined the other side or have been kumbaya with the Democrats on the other side. So the actual conservatives that I worked for 4 of them in the past, many of them do support me, and I will be caucusing with Republicans. Every vote counts. We need 21 votes. I will be caucusing in a non-binding caucus with conservatives, and I have not attacked them. I've attacked the fake ones that have joined the Democrats. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Our next question will again be for all the candidates. Seat 6 will start us off. Mr. Cronk, Ms. Nilica, Mr. Verhagen, and Mr. Carlson, and then Mr. Youmans for seat 2. You will each have 60 seconds to respond. In 2020, the politically polarized atmosphere seems to emphasize defeating one's opponent by any means rather than passing productive legislation. At the Fairbanks Chamber, we are interested in seeing the work of government get done, even if nobody gets everything they want. So the question is, what actions will you take to improve compromise and bipartisanship in our government? Where can you see opportunities for compromising in the upcoming legislative session? Mr. Cronk, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. First and foremost, I've been a leader in most every situation across this district. I've been in, playing sports in this district for 35 plus years. And as a teacher, I've traveled this district. Whether it be a sporting team, a teaching group, a fishing game advisory committee, a school board meeting, or even a major crisis that we had in the Las Vegas shooting, I have always put people first. Respect is something that I ran on during this campaign, and I've said numerous times that we all need to come together to find common ground with each other, no matter what party affiliation. I've begun those talks already with potential legislators and feel very positive that my 35 plus years of leadership, as well as bringing people together, will be a big asset when I'm elected to Juneau. I've been saying this all along. We can agree to respectfully disagree. We need to continue working for positive relationships. Those that have known me or gotten to know me know that I'm a man of the people and will work to represent everybody, no matter what their beliefs.
All right, thank you. And we do have a couple rebuttal requests. And so I think Ms. Nilica got her card up first. So Ms. Nilica, you have 30 seconds to state your rebuttal of Mr. Cronk's last answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael. I didn't hear you answer in that question how you were going to work in a bipartisanship fashion. In fact, the question that you just asked before drove a political wedge, and you tried to attack democracy when people who choose to run outside party lines are then abused for that. How can you say that you are going to work in a bipartisan fashion if you are going to throw people under the bus who are participating in democracy? Thank you.
Mr. Cronk, you have 30 seconds to respond to that.
Thank you. Great question. Well, I don't think it was throwing people under the bus. I think people deserve to know the correct answers. I have stressed from day one. I have talked to numerous Democratic legislatures through text recently about working together on certain things. And I've stated all along since I started this campaign that I am more than willing to work together with anyone to get the goals accomplished that we need to get done in this state. Bottom line.
Thank you, Ms. Nilica. You have a final 15-second opportunity to conclude your rebuttal if you'd like.
Thank you very much. I feel like you still did not answer the question just because you think that you're talking to Democratic lawmakers. That is just showing an overconfidence in thinking that you are going to win the district. I don't think that that is the way to move forward with such a complex district that we have. And I would encourage you to work harder.
Thank you. And Mr. Verhagen, you had also requested a rebuttal opportunity to Mr. Cronk's last answer. You have 30 seconds to state your rebuttal.
Thank you. So my question is, you just like you just said, you're going to work with a team. You constantly use that phrase, and you have shown that you have attacked me and my record as a conservative and as a conservative Republican who's dedicated 12 years to the Republican Party, fighting for the very principles that the party then does not hold a lot of the current Republicans that lost in the primary accountable to. And so you continually attacking me as a conservative and saying that you're going to work well with the Democrats that you don't have a one-on-one relationship with. I do. I've worked down there as a staff. I've carried bills through all their committees, and I know them and I can work with them. Thank you.
Mr. Cronk, you have 30 seconds to respond to that rebuttal.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, Elijah, you say that you have this relationship with people down there, which really is not telling the people the truth, because you really don't. I've talked to numerous legislators that say that you don't have that relationship. You know, you need to be truthful to the voters of District 6 when it comes to this. I have a very well working record across this district as a teacher, as a basketball player. I have friends in every village across this district, and it doesn't matter. And they all know that I am a person that will work together with anybody and listen, most importantly.
Thank you, Mr. Verhagen. You have a final 15-second opportunity to conclude your rebuttal if you'd like.
Well, all I can say is time will tell. It's kind of hilarious. Do you know the building's a fish tank? And I do know everyone, and they may not know me as well as I know them, but I've worked with every single one of the legislators down there and will continue to work. I've pushed as a staff good legislation that's come from the Democrats, even in a Republican-controlled caucus in the past, and I'll continue to work on.
All right, thank you. So we'll jump back to where we left off, and I will repeat the question at hand here just to give everybody a chance to get back up to speed. So the question is, what actions will you take to improve compromise and bipartisanship in our government? Where can you see opportunities for compromise in the upcoming legislative session? And Ms. Nilica, it is your opportunity to have 60 seconds to answer that.
Thank you very much. So I absolutely recognize that this district leans conservative. And you know what? I am so honored to have the support of Republicans, including the grumpiest old men that you could ever have the opportunity to meet. I'm not taking my chances of winning this district for granted. I am working harder than I've ever worked. You just heard Kronk say the $64,000 question. Well, guess what, Kronk? It's over 70 now. I am working hard to represent the people in our district, and I will listen to them and I will be serving them. Because I'm not a political insider, this has been an uphill battle. I am not an establishment darling picked by the party. I will fight to protect those who live outside urban areas and push back on policies that force urbanization, such as lack of broadband, public safety, neglected roads, and more. I will hold town halls across the district, and I will make sure that I am working with other rural legislators to protect our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Verhagen, you have 60 seconds.
Well, I just want to say one thing. If you look at our campaign donors, about 75% of my donors are people within the district. I cannot say the same about both my opponents, Kronk and Nilica. And if you look at Julia's, actually, I feel like almost every Democrat in the state has been donating to you. So you do have some local support, but of course, a lot of those dollars are not coming from within the district. As far as working together, I will continue to work together on things like roads, things like state recognition of tribes that really is long overdue in Alaska, things like the troopers and VPSOs. So there's a lot that we can work together, and I will continue to work together. Agriculture is a huge one. There's a bill that, as a staffer, I gave the briefing to my boss at the time, a Republican, and urged her to push it out of the committee because it was a good bill. Just because it came from a Democrat, it helped local grown, it helped Alaska, and so that's what there's always common ground that we could find with others. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, you have 60 seconds.
Okay, we're on the original, back to the question, right? As far as working together, I'm nonpartisan because I've lived nonpartisanship my entire life. I've never been in a political party. I don't plan on being in a political party, and I'm going to Juneau to work with people, to represent the people of Alaska. I'm more focused on people of District 6, and I just want to bring jobs back to my rural areas of Alaska. I want to bring healthcare back to my rural areas of Alaska, and I will work with anybody in Juneau that's going to support me in bringing jobs back to District 6 and bringing healthcare to District 6 and bringing education to District 6. I'm done with the homes. I'm done with boarding schools. I want to have schools for all of our children to attend schools in our district. I'm going to Juneau to bring jobs and healthcare to our steel. And I can work with everybody on it because the focus is pretty simple. This isn't that difficult. Just go down there and whatever legislation brings jobs in healthcare and retirement system and everything back to our rural areas, that's what I'm going to do. And I can do this because I've got experience down there, 14 years on the school board, and been to Juneau a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Humans, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. Working in a bipartisan manner is just good politics. We need, we are all running for public office to represent our districts. And our districts have, 40 different ideas and 40 different needs. And we need to come together as legislators to, compromise and create a package that, helps all of Alaska. We all want to have a better Alaska and not, fight and bicker. But the step to create that is to have a long-term fiscal plan so we aren't stuck every single year fighting over the same budget over and over again, so we can move past that and create a better, more bipartisan Alaska. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, we have our next candidate to candidate question next. And Ms. Nilika, you are up next, and you have 30 seconds to ask a question.
Thank you very much. This question is for Michael. You say on your website that you want to pay back over $5,000 to the residents of Alaska on their PFD. Yet in every forum we've been to, you talk about long-term projects such as mining or the Alaska-Alberta Railroad. I'm sure you're aware that these are not quick fixes. So how do you intend to pay back money now without gouging services that our residents rely on? The only concrete cut I've seen or heard you mention is public radio, which is a communication that our residents rely on.
Thank you, Mr. Cronk. You have 60 seconds to answer.
Thank you. That's a good question. I have stated on my website that I would want to pay back the $5,000. I did not say we are going to pay back the $5,000. I'm saying we're going to fight to pay back the $5,000. The state should have never taken that money from the Alaska residents, who you well know it harms the greatest in District 6. So I've never said we are going to pay that back, but I do believe our state should be working towards paying that back. And back for cuts, and somebody's going to throw this out there, I mentioned a lot of things that I felt could fix situations, especially in education. I did not say I was going to go to Juneau to fight for those things and add more money to the budget. In fact is, as a teacher, I have continually said that education does not need more funding right now, but we do need to fix the system so our money is being spent the best for the state of Alaska.
Thank you. Ms. Nilica, do you have a 15-second response?
Yeah, so what I just heard you say is that you don't have a plan. That's not a formula. That's just like establishment talk, and you're just going to follow along with the Dunleavy administration without thought, research, care. It's just a continuation of lazy legislation and ego-driven leadership. Sorry, Mike.
Mr. Cronk, you have 30 seconds to clarify.
Well, that's simply not true. That sounds more like a Democrat response to a situation. We are Alaskans first and foremost, and we need to get down there and work. We can't add more funding to this budget, and that's what they seem like they want to leave the budget at this high rate where we can't afford to do this without cuts and actually having real life conversations down there. We are going to have to identify essential services and non-essential services and make those cuts. It was going to hurt many people, and no one wants to hurt anybody, but it's going to. But we have to make those cuts for the future of Alaska.
All right, thank you. Okay, for all the candidates again, we'll have 60 seconds to answer the next question. We will start with Ms. Nilica, then Mr. Verhagen, Mr. Carlson, and Mr. Cronk, and followed by seat 2, Mr. Humans. So after the dramatic economic fall in early 2020, some industries have come soaring back, like home improvement stores and Amazon, while others have experienced a continuing downturn, like restaurants and tourism. Though many have innovated and adapted to stay open and keep their employees on payrolls, companies can survive for only so long with reduced revenues. So the question is, do you support additional federal or state aid to businesses? If so, what is the legislature's role in ensuring that any future aid is distributed efficiently and has meaningful impact on our economy? How will you target support to those businesses, workers, and communities that, due to factors out of their control, find themselves on a downward or flat trajectory? Ms. Nilica, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. Absolutely. I support more federal aid. We need to put pressure on our congressional delegation and federal government who have left Alaskans in the cold by lack of adequate planning. We need long-term sustainable solution. These fiscal quarters of 3 to 4 months of planning are ludicrously short-sighted and damaging to small businesses, families, and further erodes faith in government. The pandemic aid is not a political toy. You know, one thing that I'm really concerned about is our new and exciting industry of peony farming, and because it's been threatened by this short time frame assistance. I learned of this when Sullivan came to Nenana, and a farmer brought this to his attention about being locked out of payroll assistance. He insisted to her that she would have help. But I've asked around to other peony farmers in this district, and she is right. They are locked out. We need dependable, appropriate security nets. We need rapidly and efficiently prudent distribution of those. How can we give a tax break to the rich, but we can't help our small businesses and middle class?
Thank you. Mr. Verhagen, you have 60 seconds.
So I was working this past session in Juneau when several of the members of the majority at the time in the House stood up and said, we don't need to give the people the rest of their 29 PFD. We don't need to give a stimulus amount of money. The feds are taking care of us. Well, that is ridiculous. The feds are 23 trillion in debt. Now they're like 26 trillion in debt. So this is a tough question. I'm not going to turn away any federal money that is continually coming into, and I will fight hard that it does go to the businesses that need it the most and doesn't end up in others' pockets. But I will not turn away federal aid. However, that is continually increasing our national debt. As far as local money, I will fight, like I said, for a full PFD because it's the people's money that will help each other. And I will fight for incentives from the government, but not bailouts from our state government because we really can't afford that right now, but we should never be shutting down the private economy like we did. That really, really hurt our businesses. It hurt my business. And so I want a full PFD, but no bailouts from the government.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, you have 60 seconds.
This is I think a very, very large, complex question. You're asking for a 60-second answer on a $2 trillion question. And I don't actually have a simple 60-second answer, but I am going to say, if anything, it's like I want to see a lot more resources put into testing so we can get a handle on the virus, so we can get people back to work. And it's not just people back to work, it's getting businesses open to where I think the one thing people are really missing is restaurants and those kind of industries, and they got to get back to the business. But I think the only way we're going to do that in the short term is that we got to improve our testing so we know where the virus is going and where it's not coming from, so we can get travel back into the thing. And then and we also are going to have to work tightly with the Canadians to figure out how we can get our tourists coming north again. I don't think that's an insurmountable task, whether it be working with our state ferry system to get our boats coming north, and then or working with the Alaska highway system to get the tourists coming north. We can do that. I think the Canadians would work with us if we opened up a dialogue.
Thank you. Mr. Cronk, you have 60 seconds.
Sorry, I do support the federal aid if it's going to come to us. This COVID crisis really has proven how important small businesses are across not only the state, but especially District 6. I mean, locally, in Tok, we have, our 3 Bears, and Healy has a 3 Bears, and I've seen this affect everybody, and we need to make sure our small businesses stay flourishing. I have specifically traveled around this district, and I made sure I was buying products from them. So we need to make sure that we are supporting our small businesses because they are the glue to our small communities. When you have events going on in your small communities, whether it's Nenana, Northway, Choke, your businesses are the ones that are sponsoring those events. And we need to make sure that they know that they are important. So I would make sure that we are getting those funds to those businesses so they can continue to flourish. And like Vern says, we can't go another summer without tourism. We need to make sure that we have tourism come to the state next year. We need to make sure that we're not relying on big corporate businesses. We need to make sure we protect our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Humans, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I would absolutely support more federal aid. I think that it's way past due for the federal government to step in and support our small businesses. We need the legislator's job in supporting in distributing these funds is to make sure that they get out in a timely manner, which they did not do this last time around. It was an entire mess because the Dunleavy administration wanted to illegally go through the RPL process. And then we need to make sure that we're funding test and tracing so we can actually get control of the virus. Every day for the past couple of years, the past couple of weeks, we've been increasing. And we need to follow the science and get that back down so that we can increase consumer confidence so that they're willing to go and support these small businesses and go to restaurants. But we need to get the virus under control. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our candidates for answering that question. Up next, we have another candidate-to-candidate question, and it is Mr. Verhagen's chance to ask a question. Mr. Verhagen, you have 30 seconds to ask your question.
Sounds good. Thank you. My question is to Mike Cronk. So you said at our Two Rivers debate about raising revenue when they've asked you, and you could repeatedly ignore talking about where you're actually going to cut the budget. But you said, we don't need any new revenue. We're good with cuts. So you would have to cut the entire education budget and the entire corrections budget completely to even close our budget deficit this year, let alone the unfunded liabilities, etc. So please be more specific and give me right now some areas where you can cut $1.5 billion. Thank you. And not raise revenue.
I don't believe I ever said we didn't need additional revenue. I've been stating fact that we have to create additional revenue, and you as well as everybody else here knows that additional revenue just doesn't come out of the ground and we have it in our bank account tomorrow. It takes years of preparation to do this. We have to identify essential, non-essential. I said the government's job is to provide public safety, education, and we have the health. We can be looking at our Medicaid system. There is a ton of fraud in the Medicaid system that we need to make sure that we're not spending that money on. So when you say that I said no additional revenue, that is simply absolutely not true. I said we obviously know that. Now, what kind of spending are we going to have? We are going to have to make cuts, but we are going to have to use some of the revenue, whether it's in the ERA or what's left in the CBR, to balance this budget. But first and foremost, we need a spending cap before we start making any of these cuts, because that is the starting point of this next session.
Mr. Verhagen, you have a 15-second response if you'd like.
Okay, so again, no real places where you cut. And anyone who wants to look up the Two Rivers debate, he did say that we don't need any new revenue coming in, and we absolutely do. I have a plan. Ask me about it. We need both. We need major cuts and more revenue. Thank you. Mr.
Cronk, you have a 30-second to clarify.
I'm not sure about the no new revenue, but we know that any new revenue is years out. It's not an instant thing. So we are going to have to sit down at the table as adults and work together and make these cuts and make sure the budget is balanced for the next probably 5 years. Oil prices are not going up. We can see that the progress of them is just kind of at a standstill. So obviously we need to make the cuts. We need to have a spending cap in place, and we need to work together to make sure our future of Alaska is strong.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to move into our rapid fire round of yes/no questions. So you should have your red and green cards in front of you. And for our colorblind friends, the green card has a check mark to indicate yes, and the red card has an X to indicate no. If you don't have your card, please indicate your answer using a thumbs up or thumbs down. For each question, please hold up the card that corresponds with your answer and keep it up until all candidates have responded. And we'll start here with a warm-up question. So, have you ever been introduced at a political event by someone who mispronounced your name? All righty, thank you. Okay, so now we're ready for the real questions here. All right, first one. When you know that you are entering a business where you will need to stand within 6 feet of other Fairbanks residents, or whatever community you're in, do you wear a face mask? Thank you. Ballot measure 1 on the November 3rd general election ballot would increase the state tax rate on oil production and discourage future investment by oil companies in Alaska. Would you encourage someone listening today to vote for this initiative? Thank you. Do you support increasing the state's outdated motor fuel tax to fund our state's infrastructure needs? Okay, thank you. Would you support implementing a broad-based tax, such as a state income or sales tax, to pay for state services if current revenue does not cover existing programs? Okay, thank you. Okay, now I'm going to read off a list of projects at varying stages of consideration for Alaska. Use your yes or no cards to indicate if you support each one. First, a road to the Ambler Mining District to the Dalton Highway. Okay. The Alaska to Alberta Railroad, or A2A, connecting Canada to our existing rail system. Thank you. A deep water port in Nome. Thank you. The Susitna River Dam. Thank you. And finally, a natural gas pipeline from the North Slope to South Central Alaska. All right, thank you. Okay, we have one more prepared question for our candidates and one more candidate to candidate question. So audience, for those of you watching on YouTube, this is your final reminder that if you have a question, and you would like to have us ask it, Please submit it in the chat box now. Audience questions will be selected before we complete this final selected and prepared question. So get those questions in there. Candidates, you will have 45 seconds to respond to this next question. We will start with seat 6 one more time. So we'll go Mr. Verhagen, Mr. Carlson, Mr. Kronk, and Ms. Nilica, and then we'll follow that with Mr. Humans in seat 2. The events of 2020 have reinforced the vital services that K-12 schools provide to our community. Having students at school is best for kids, it's best for working parents, and it's best for the local economy. Teachers have professional expertise in educational methods, and they are best suited to educate future citizens and train the future workforce. Schools also provide an important service to the economy by providing a safe and productive environment for children. Childcare was a challenge for working Alaskans before COVID-19. With most students in Fairbanks still learning from home full-time, the need has only increased, and businesses are struggling to accommodate parents juggling childcare and professional responsibilities. Bringing students, teachers, and staff back into school buildings safely is a huge task, and there are costs to rearrange classrooms, provide the necessary cleaning supplies, and manage the changes going forward. So the question is, what level of support should the state of Alaska provide to public schools with these unforeseen costs, and how does this fit with your budget priorities? Mr. Verhagen, you have 45 seconds.
So our children should definitely be in school right now. The data shows that people 70 plus have a 95% survival rate for COVID. We need to be doing what we can to protect our most vulnerable, but the impacts and deaths on children, I don't think there's one kid in Alaska that has died from COVID. And it is ridiculous that there are so many heartbreaking stories of single parents that are juggling their work because of, and there's families that with 5 kids and they're all on different Zoom classes in their house. It's crazy. It's very hard on the families and businesses. And so our kids should be in school. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that our kids do not get gypped on their education just because their parents choose to live in this wonderful rural district that we live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, you have 45 seconds.
Again, this is not a 45-second answer for a question that's so complex as this. You're talking about $1 billion question and want a 45-second answer. I gotta say, I got a family member that's upstairs teaching a 40 class right now as we talk. Do we want to open our schools? Heck yes, I want to open my schools. How much money do I want to spend on open my schools? That I don't have a total answer for. And am I going to expect, I know the government is supplying money, the federal government is supplying money, is like that is going to be used to mitigate some of these answers. What we don't know, and we have to find a solution for, is what the death rate of this is going to be in the long term. We don't know that yet, and we need to find that out before we open these buildings back up.
Thank you. Mr. Kronk, you have 45 seconds.
And sorry, it is more difficult to be out of your classroom than it is, what we're doing right now. And I just talked to some teachers at Two Rivers, and it is very frustrating for them. If I was a teacher right now, I'd want to be in my classroom with my students. We obviously, there's CARES Act funds, and I believe the state probably didn't do the best job of distributing those. Our school district alone got about $160,000 for the CARES Act, and some of the smaller communities got 1.2 million or 800,000. We need to get back and make sure that our schools are getting this. They're safe. Our schools, by the way, are open. We did just close down a couple schools because some COVID hit, but we have those are, we have those contingency plans already there for them. But I'm an advocate getting kids back to school. It's their mental health. We have to get kids back in the school building and living their life. Those are the memories they make in high school.
Thank you. Ms. Nilica, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. Firstly, we need stable and consistent funding. It's imperative during normal times, and now it's even more important during COVID. House District 6 is a complex and diverse district. We have students who use correspondence, they go to brick and mortar schools, and we even have a living center here in Nenana. Our students go to big schools like Lathrop, and they go to small schools like Kenny Lake. No, not our school. All of our schools in our district are open. It's ever changing. In February and March, I got to travel to schools all over, and I saw the exciting programs such as after-school dog mushing and helping NASA research. We need to make sure that these stay open. We need to make sure that our living center in Nenana, right now it's currently at grave risk. It's still not sure if it falls under the held harmless legislation that was passed. This confusion at state level needs to be addressed head on by a solid plan to protect students and schools.
Thank you. Mr. Humans, you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I too wish that our students were in school. My daughter is missing her first year of kindergarten and being homeschooled instead, and it's very hard for her. But we need to make sure that we're not, increasing our case count and ruining everything. We need to get these kids back into school safely and not just rush them back because we don't know the long-term consequences of this. And we need to follow science and do the right thing. And part of that is going to be, the state providing assistance to small businesses and teachers and parents to be able to, teach their kids in a safe and effective manner. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So our final candidate question will be asked by Mr. Carlson. Mr. Carlson, you have 30 seconds to ask your question.
Actually, I really don't have a question for the other candidates because I'm running to represent the people. I'm not running to represent other candidates. I'm not running to represent a party. I'm just running to represent the people of Alaska, the people of District 6, and bring jobs back. It's pretty simple. Everybody else is running for whatever reason, but I just want people to come ask me, tell me what they want, tell me the direction they want their state to go, and I'm going to listen to that and take that. So I don't have a question for the other candidates because I know what they feel and I've met with it. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we'll take a few questions from the audience that have been submitted. And so our order here, and let me check real quickly. Our first question, you will each have 60 seconds to answer this one. Our order will be Mr. Humans, Mr. Carlson, Mr. Cronk, Ms. Nilica, and Mr. Verhagen. And the question is, the University of Alaska is one of the biggest budget drivers in our state. Do you believe its budget should receive further cuts beyond the pact between the governor and the regents? How will this affect the training of our future workforce in the interior? So, Mr. Humans, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. That's very important. The university is an economic driver for Fairbanks, and we need to make sure that it is fully funded. And we need to take back the cuts that the governor instituted. We need to make sure that the University of Alaska is a premier university for both climate research and to prepare jobs for future Alaskans. We need to support this. We need to support the university by getting it its, land grant back, and we need to make sure that it is supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, you have 60 seconds.
First of all, the university is actually not the biggest budget driver in the state. It's probably, I think, the third one down, or maybe even the fourth one down. I've got the data over here. What I would do is we have to work on the land grants and get that back up to speed where the university was intended to be self-funded. And I will work hard to get that to where the university is self-funded so where they don't have to worry about funding from the state level of the tax base, but funding of where they're kind of self-sufficient between tuitions and land grants and other larger grants that they can get to where the state part would be, state taxes would be less.
Thank you. Mr. Cronk, you have 60 seconds.
Great question. I do believe, you know what, we should honor the pact that they made with the governor. You know, I believe that's about $70 million in cuts that they agreed to. So I think we should, you know, agree to that and you know, sit back and make sure they're making those cuts at this point. Obviously, I'm a University of Alaska Fairbanks grad, as well as some of the other candidates here. And, you know, that's our school, that's our hometown university. But that doesn't mean that we just need to keep flooding them with money. We need to focus on what we're good at. What we're good at is engineering. And we need to build a teaching program that produces our local workforce of teachers, as well as a public safety program that we can get our own local public safety people in those positions. So I believe, you know, the university is a driving force. I don't think anybody wants to see it go away. And I believe, you know, what Vern says is we need to make it so it's more self-sustainable in Fairbanks and not so much dependent on the state budget.
Thank you. Ms. Nilika, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. So actually the question is if we should make further cuts than the pact. And I absolutely disagree with that. I think that there is an entire culture around our university that is an exciting opportunity to capture. So we know that the university is an economic driver for the interior. We know that our interior students and students from all over the state come to the university. Most recently, I just graduated in 2020 with my master's in rural development, and it was an incredible, really amazing Alaska-centric program. And that is what we need to focus on. We as a state are the entire reason that the United States of America is part of the Arctic Compact, so that we are part of this research that needs to be done. We need to make sure that Alaska is focused on, that we are seen as an Arctic player, and that we need not to be left behind in research, infrastructure, and culture as well. If you've ever been up to the Tulik Field Research Station, you will know that our Arctic research is deeply important, and we need to support it through our university, not by cutting it.
Thank you. Mr. Verhagen, you have 60 seconds.
So I guess, yeah, it sounds like a lot of us. I'm a UAF grad. I got a bachelor's in political science and a construction management degree as well. Use them both. I will be advocating for further cuts to the University of Alaska. It's a shame that we only have really 3 major universities in Alaska. I hate seeing our students have to leave, a lot of them choosing to leave because we don't have certain programs, etc. However, we are all in this budget crisis together. And again, I do not think a lot of people do not realize how big of a crisis this is. It's not right to pick on one department and gut it all. And again, it would have to completely eliminate certain departments to even come close to budgeting, to balancing the budget. I do have a plan to bring in more revenue, not by taxing the people, but we do have to skim. You could either cut entire programs, you could skim a certain percentage off, but I am going to fight for cutting off a skim percentage off of every state department, including the university's budget. We just have to do that, especially if we want a full PFD and especially if we want to balance the budget, which I am definitely for. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, next up we have another audience question, a bit shorter. You'll each have 15 seconds to respond. And the question is, very straightforward, who are you supporting for President of the United States? Mr. Carlson, you have 15 seconds.
I had that question thrown at me the other day, and I'm going to say I'm going to decline the answer. I'm nonpartisan. I don't play in political parties. I'm down here to represent the people, and I'm not going to answer that question because it sends me into a party, and I don't want to send myself into a party because I'm here to represent Alaskans. I'm here to represent District 6.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cronk, 15 seconds.
Well, I am in support of our President Trump right now, and it's because his policies for Alaska have been the strongest policies of any president in the history of the United States, and they're policies that are going to help us economically and and promote our future for Alaska. So I'm going to support President Trump.
Ms. Nilika.
Thank you very much. I do agree with Michael that President Trump has passed policies, but I want to actually see action. So I will be voting for Biden and Kamala Harris. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Verhagen.
So kind of like Vern, this is a tough one for me. I do support President Trump, and he has done fantastic things for Alaska, especially recently with the Tongass National Forest progress and the A2A railroad permit. So I do support him. But yeah, it's tough because I'm undeclared.
Thank you. And Mr. Humans.
Thank you. I am voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for president, but it took a little while for me to come to that side, but that's who I'm voting for.
All right, thank you. We have, it looks like one more audience question, and this one is a bit longer, so you'll each have 60 seconds to respond. The question is, during the last Alaska legislative session, a bill was introduced to put into statute how the state of Alaska will designate national resource waters, also known as Tier 3 waters, under the Clean Water Act. Should decisions about applying highly restrictive regulations to a region be made by state agencies or the elected representatives of the people with input from experts? We will start with Mr. Cronk, and you have 60 seconds to respond.
Obviously, I think whenever there's a decision like this that needs to be made, I think the people need to have a voice in this. And we need to make sure we're not adding additional restrictions on resource development. And, you know, we can develop resources very responsibly. I believe that, you know, whenever we have a mine that's going into play, the agencies, the number of different agencies are unbelievable. Like in Pebble, when I was just listening to a guy talk about it, there's 13 different agencies involved in that process. So I want to make sure that the people are involved in the process. Again, we are 40 representatives and 20 senators. So I think the people need to be a part of this process whenever we have a decision that's going to come down the pipe like this for the state of Alaska.
Thank you. Ms. Nilica, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. I believe that public input is the most important when we move forward with regional projects. This is exactly why I'm suited for this job. I've spent the last couple of years and also time before that researching and making sure that I'm talking to people, balancing budgets, and working on logistics as well. Our people need to have a voice, and they need to also make sure that they're the ones developing our resources. Michael just mentioned that we don't need to have more regulation. Possibly that's true, but I think the way to work around that is by making sure that Alaskans are the ones developing our resources. We are the ones who care about our land, our water, and our animals as well. And we do need to make sure that we have clean drinking water. When we have multinational corporations come in here to resource smash and grab from our state, they will walk away, and they will walk away with a team of lawyers behind them to fight cleanup and to fight mitigation that our regulations put on them. We've seen that time and time again, and we need to make sure we continue that we fight that in the future for our future generations.
Thank you. Mr. Verhagen, you have 60 seconds.
So that this navigable waters bill was quite the debate this last session down in Juneau. I do not support the bill currently as is. However, that does not mean that we cannot continue to get input from District 6 residents and amend it if it gets introduced again, and see if we could find the balance to keep our water clean and safe, but at the same time not prohibit people from using our navigable waters. John Sturgeon, he won all the way up, appealed, and won in the Supreme Court of the United States to be able to use our water here in Alaska as Alaskans. And so we already are so controlled by the feds in Alaska. We have to be really careful. And when there are decisions like this made, it's always best with input from the people and then the state legislature. And so, yeah, we'll look at the bill and we'll, if anything, amend it to make it better. If not, I do not support the bill. Thanks.
Thank you. 60 seconds for you, Mr. Carlson.
This is a piece of legislation that I'm kind of unfamiliar with at this time, so I don't really have a good, clear, and concise answer. But when it comes to the health and welfare of the people and/or the fish and wildlife or the birds or whatever it is, whenever it comes to any kind of a development that involves the environment or navigable waterways or whatever, I would definitely defer to the Alaska State Legislature and/or the people of Alaska, whom we are. The legislature is the people of Alaska, and I'm here to represent the people, and their voices will be heard through me because I won't allow any other way. You know, I'm just like, call me, tell me what you think. And once I'm more versed on this, I'll have a more clear opinion, I guess, about where this bill should go. So thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Humans, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely think that the people of Alaska deserve the right to be heard on resource development issues. I think it just makes simple common sense. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, some technical difficulties here. Okay, so to conclude today's forum, we're giving each candidate 60 seconds to give your closing remarks. We're going to start with seat 6, with the order being Ms. Nilica, Mr. Verhagen, Mr. Carlson, and Mr. Cronk, and then conclude with seat number 2, Mr. Humans. Ms. Nilica, you have 60 seconds to give your closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for moderating. Thank you for organizing. I really appreciate this platform. I believe we come from an abundant land and hard-working, resilient people. We should not be made to feel afraid for our futures. When you vote for me, it's a vote for somebody who listens and acts responsibly as a public servant. I care about our people, our safety, education, and absolutely work opportunities. When you hear people use buzzwords like liberal, come talk to me. I would love to have a conversation with you. Don't let other candidates paint me into a corner or my beliefs. I will fight to have our resources developed by Alaskans. I want to make sure that we have opportunities to add value. A vote for Julia is a vote for fighting against forced urbanization by thoughtless policies that place burdens on rural residents. The H in my name might be silent, but I'm not. Please follow along and get to know me at facebook.com/JuliaForAlaska, on my website, juliaalaska.com. The future is Alaskan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Verhagen, you have 60 seconds.
So my name is Elijah Verhagen, born and raised in Inanna in this district. I really love this place. Chose to build my house, start raising my family here. Plan to stay. I have the legislative experience working 7 legislative sessions in Juneau that none of my opponents have. That has helped me realize that I'm really not content with what I keep on seeing down there. The binding caucuses have been used in both parties for the longest time. The parties really, I'm a registered undeclared. I made that harder decision to run as a conservative undeclared for a reason. You may have great intentions, but no matter what you say, the parties do definitely push you around if you do not join with them, and will kick you out of the caucus if it's another binding caucus. And so I've seen that firsthand. I've been kicked out as a staffer because of what my boss has voted on, fighting for her constituents. I will always fight for you, the people. And I appreciate your vote. Go to verhagenforhouse.com and check me out on Facebook and give me a call, 687-699-04. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson, you have 60 seconds.
I'm just looking to represent the people of Alaska. Just to dispute one of my opponents a little bit there. There's nothing in the Alaska State Constitution says about a binding caucus. I'm not believing in that. I'm going down to represent you, the people of District 6. I'm going down to represent the people of Alaska. I'm there, to support. If anything, I want jobs back in District 6. I want healthcare back in District 6, and I want education back in District 6. This isn't that difficult. I think Alaska is a great place to be. We are not as broke as everybody thinks that we are, and so I'm not going down there to say I want to cut, because I don't believe in the term cutting. I think we just need to prioritize where we're spending our money and how we want to spend it, and that's the least of my focus right now. I'm more focused on want to bring jobs back to the state. In the past 20 years, Anchorage has gained approximately 500 to 1,000 jobs. Well, Fairbanks has gone down 500 to 1,000 jobs, and or District 6. The data's on the website of you can look at this page right there. It's on the state website. So put me in there. I'm bringing jobs back to the interior of Alaska. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cronk, you have 60 seconds.
Well, thank you so much for the Chamber for hosting this forum, and you for moderating, any other candidates for being here. I've run my campaign on the basis of people getting to know who Mike Cronk is. I've had Representative Tallarico's support and endorsement since we started this race, and I never name dropped him. I never used him until he recently came out with an endorsement. People have gotten to know me because I'm genuine and I'm real. I bring 35 plus years of experience. As an individual and as a leader, whether it be on a basketball court, representing the great state of Alaska as a UAF Nanook, a teacher, a coach, a regional school board member, or a Fish and Game Advisory Committee member, I've led with positivity, willingness to listen, and by example. I've been across this district for the past 40 years, building relationships from Northwood to Tok, Glen Allen, Nenana, Healy, Cantwell, Fort Yukon, Tanana. I'm the proud father of 4 beautiful, smart, strong Athabascan daughters, as well as 3 grandchildren, sorry. And Alaska's future is bright. We need to quit painting it as so negative. We have a very positive future, and we need to get down there and get to work.
Thank you. And Mr. Humans, you have 60 seconds.
Yeah. Thank you to the Chamber for putting this on, and thank you to everyone, all the candidates for participating, and all the people out there who are watching and learning more about the candidates out here. My name's Jeremiah Humans, and I'm running for House District 2 as a normal person who is fed up with the gridlock in Juneau. I'm tired of seeing these candidates who are mathematically challenged and have no idea of what to do with the actual budget. They have no ideas. They have no answers. They have nothing. They just say, we're going to cut the budget. And I'm tired of that as an Alaskan. So I'm here to represent the people of District 2 to get an actual, long-term fiscal plan so that we can have the bright future that Mike Cronk sees. You can visit my website, humansforalaska.com. And you can email me at jeremiah@humansforalaska.com, and you can visit me on Facebook at facebook.com/humansforalaska. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you again to all our candidates for participating in our 2020 online political forum series. We at the Fairbanks Chamber appreciate your flexibility and willingness to try this new online format with us. Thank you to our audience for informing yourselves about the coming election and the unusual year that we've been having. Recordings of today's forum and all of our 2020 Fairbanks Chamber forums can be found on fairbankschamber.org. We have 2 more political forums coming up before Election Day. The first one is next Tuesday, October 20th, when we will hear from the candidates for Alaska House Seat 4 and Senate Seat B. After that, our final forum for this season will feature the candidates for U.S. Senate and House on Tuesday, October 27th. Please join us online for those discussions. Thank you for tuning in today, and we will see you all next Tuesday. Thank you.